All right. So welcome everyone to Just Roots Kitchen Intuition Cooking Class. We're so excited to have you. My name is Brooke. I use she, her pronouns. I am a cook and a person who cares a lot about eating local foods, also a farmer, and I'm excited to be teaching our class tonight. And we also have with us our community care coordinator from Just Roots Farm, Irene Blasco, who's going to be, Irene, you want to wave so folks, I guess they won't be able to see you, but Irene's here listening in.
Hi,
And
everyone.
there she is. And if you have any questions during the class, you're welcome to unmute yourself and just ask them. Or you can type them in the chat, and Irene is going to be working diligently to get those questions answered or repeat them to me. And Irene will also write out any of the directions you may have missed as we go through our recipe. Okay, folks, this is an exciting one for me. We are doing bibimbap, which is a Korean rice dish. You may have heard of it, you may have not. Bibim, that root word, it means mixing, and bap is cooked rice. So what this dish is a mix of like sometimes meat. In our case, we're doing tofu, vegetables, and rice, and you can serve it with a number of things. Fried eggs, you can do pickled vegetables, kimchi, fermented vegetables or pickles. You can do it with meat. I've always had it served with a fried egg on top. So if you have an egg and you have a quick minute at the end, you can certainly fry that up. Just, do sunny side up and break the yolk over the top. And yeah, today we're doing a fried tofu version, and that was a request someone put in their survey that they took after this cooking workshop, that they wanted to work with tofu a little bit more. So we're going to explore that a bit. But I encourage you to try this recipe again on your own. Try it with meat, try it with different vegetables like broccoli or cauliflower. Try adding more pickled stuff in with it because it's good. It might be a little funky for some folks' taste buds, but it's delicious. And then, yeah, I've often made this at home with shaved beef. I get it from Big Y. It's super cheap, price per pound. And try that out if you're ever able to. I just want to briefly touch on the tofu. So in your kits, you got a container of tofu. If you've never worked with tofu before, I like to buy extra firm tofu. And that just actually means that the tofu itself is extra firm. There's an array of tofu from extra firm to silken, which is like really soft. You can use it for like making mousses or something like that. So extra firm tends to be the best for frying and stir fries. Now, this extra firm tofu is a nice concrete block, but a lot of times it has a lot of extra moisture. We had talked about doing this or sent reminders out, and if you didn't do this, it's okay. It's totally fine. But what I've often done in restaurants when working with tofu is I freeze it overnight and then I unthaw it. And the reason I do that is it actually helps push out some of that extra water. So when I opened my container, there was a lot of water wanting to pour out, and that's good. There are other ways that you can, what we call press tofu, which means get that excess water out. And one way is just squeezing it with your hands. Another way that I've done it before is, I'm just going to demo it with our tofu here, is like setting it on a plate and putting a weight on top. So a weight could be a rock, it could be just another bowl, something heavy, and letting it sit for a while. And that weight will slowly ooze the water out. So that's another trick. You can put it right in your fridge. There's a number of different things you could do to get that excess water out. And in fact, there's a dish, a Japanese dish, where you actually, for like a week, you have a weight on the tofu that's slowly getting that water out, and it compresses in such an amazing way. So that is the tofu situation, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. We have a lot of steps in this recipe, a lot of small steps. And so if you fall a little bit behind, that's okay. Work at your own pace. You can always watch the video after if you'd like. You could watch and not cook along if you'd like as well. But Also, let us know if you want us to slow down, we can slow down. We are going to try to get it done within, the next 50 minutes and maybe stay over a little bit, but not much. So let's get started. The first thing, this is out of order from the recipe list, but just to make this work within the timing of our class, we're going to start with our zucchini. And the reason we're going to do that is because I'm going to salt the zucchini, which does kind of what pressing does with tofu. We want to get excess water out because we're frying it. So I am going to cut my zucchini into matchsticks. And that's because I want a lot of surface area so that once I salt it, that water can exit. So the way I'm going to do that, my zucchini were really small. I'm sure you probably had similar size, but if you have a big one, you're going to do the same thing, just bigger strips. And I'm cutting, you can cut it in half first if you'd like, so it rests flat on a surface. But I am just making some thin slices. I'll show you how thin. Down my zucchini. And this is the first step of matchsticking them. We're going to do this with the carrots as well. We're just making little small cuts. So I've got my thin slivers of zucchini. Okay, I'm going to finish up. And then you'll hear a little bit of noise of my dog coming in. Sorry about that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut these in half because we don't want them super, super long. So I'm going to show you that. I'm just going to stack them all up at once like this. Let's see, looks like I need to move my cutting board over a little. Gonna cut them in half and then we can twist them again and we're gonna matchstick them. So what that's gonna look like is just thin slices. I'll hold those up in a moment. Okay, it doesn't matter exactly how small they are, it's just gonna affect your cook time. So if you slice them a little bit bigger, they're going to need a little more time to cook. And they don't have to be perfect. I just did mine on a slant, but I'm going to stick these in a bowl because we're going to salt them. So go ahead and cut those all up, stick them in a bowl. You don't necessarily even have to matchstick them for this recipe. Bibimbap is really open. You use seasonal vegetables. It's kind of just like a rice bowl. So if you wanted to slice into rounds, that could work too. And I also brought out a summer squash just because summer squash and zucchini, well, zucchini is a type of squash and you can use those interchangeably if you'd like. So I had this growing in the garden. That would be a great substitution. And you may have noticed our recipe today, we got Swiss chard as our cooking green, but you can use spinach, you can use kale, you can use collard greens. There's just endless substitutions you could do here. So let's get these all cut up. And one thing to know is we are going to be salting our zucchini, and we're not going to want to overly salt them because we're not going to be rinsing them off again. So we'll just make sure that depending on how much, because everyone's zucchini is a little bit different sized, we'll look at what I'm going to do and then base it off of how much zucchini you have. I'm getting all these matchsticks. If you really want to work on your knife skills, you can cut them even smaller. Sometimes I like to stack them as long as they're not slipping, so I can cut a little bit faster. Right. And so this is just one of the very many vegetable sides you could do with this dish. I've also had it traditionally with mushrooms, like it's super good with shiitake or button mushrooms. Those are super, super tasty in this dish too. And then I just want to, while I'm chopping these, highlight one of the important ingredients in this dish, and that is gochujang or fermented chili paste. you would have gotten one of two kinds just because the places we were able to source them, we weren't able to get enough of one kind. But you can get gochujang sauce at any Asian market, and you can also get it at Big Y. You can get it at the Franklin Community Co-op. Most grocery stores will carry it in the international foods aisle. Okay, so I've got pretty much a full bowl of zucchini here. And for this bowl, I'm going to use about a half a teaspoon of salt to get these sweating. Then I'm going to, you can stir it with whatever you like. I've always found chopsticks are really good at stirring things in small bowls if you chose a small bowl like I did. Like this.
Brooke, Janet is asking about she has broccoli and what should be a good way to incorporate it.
Well, one thing that would be kind of low key is to oven roast your broccoli. That way because we're going to have a lot of pots and pans on the stove already. So I would oven roast it, put some olive oil and stir it in with your broccoli so the crowns are covered, and then roast it at like 350 and get it a little bit crunchy. That could be really good. You're also welcome to like steam it and blanch it, or you could do like a light stir fry. So a little bit of oil, you could put some sesame oil, some garlic, but I'd say that the most hands-off and easy to make it delicious way would be to oven roast it. Okay, folks, so I've stirred in my salt and I'm going to put it to the side and let it sit for about 10 minutes or until we have time to get back to it. The next thing we're going to do is cut our carrots. So I'm not sure if your carrots look like mine in your box, but I had a bunch of teensy tiny ones. Those are kind of hard to matchstick, and you'll see why as you go to make, let me make sure you can see, cuts like we did with our zucchini. It's pretty tiny to then be going through and matchsticking. I'm not saying it's impossible, but so you're welcome to do that, or you could very simply just slice it into rounds, and that's going to cook very well too. So because they're little, I'm just going to cut thin rounds like that. I'll show you what that looks like. If I had a really thick piece or a wide carrot, I would probably want to cut it in half. And I'm going to get a bowl to put these cut carrots into. You can also switch it up, practice your knife skills, do some matchsticking, some rounds. I'm going to leave the butt end off. So we're going to cut up all the carrots. Now, if you have carrots that have some like black or rotting on it, make sure to cut that off. You don't need that. And a lot of times folks like to peel their carrots, and if carrots don't look super duper fresh, I often like to use a peeler and just get some of that outer skin off, and then you'll find right under there it's looking a lot nicer. That skin's job is just protecting it and keeping moisture in, so it will dry out before the inside of the carrot does. So give it a second chance. So I'm slicing into rounds. And right now what we're doing, if anyone joined late, is we're just prepping the vegetables to be cooked for this dish. We've done our zucchini, we're doing our carrots, and next up we're going to mince garlic, if anyone's a step ahead. If you want to use a food processor to mince your garlic, you're welcome to do that. We're actually not going to be cutting that much, probably just like a tablespoon of garlic or something altogether. And folks, I know that garlic can have counterindications with some medications. If raw garlic is also difficult for you to digest, or you have a sensitive system, you can certainly leave it out. You can substitute it with powdered garlic, so dried garlic, if that's easier for you to digest or process. And you can always switch it out with something like ginger too, which is another like powerful root crop. So just keep those options in mind if that's something you need. And then, you know, garlic is a really heavy part of the dish, and it's important to the flavor profile, but you can certainly find other ways to make it tasty and delicious. So I cut those bigger rounds in half. And I'm going to keep going with this until I mostly fill up this bowl, which will be all the carrots that were in my kit. Sometimes I'll just use a knife to cut off those little parts that I don't want, instead of peeling if it's only a little bit. And that's the problem with carrot rounds. They always roll off the cutting board. And we are not going to salt the carrots right now. They're very different than zucchini. You can feel it when you're cutting it. Mine are wet on the outside because I just washed them, but on the inside they have a more solid form than zucchini. And the reason we use that salt on the zucchini is we don't want all that water to come out in our frying pan, but that's not going to happen with carrots. Almost done here. The important thing is trying to keep these pieces of somewhat consistent size, just so they cook evenly. So you're not biting into a, you know, undercooked piece of carrot, and nothing is sticking to the frying pan and disintegrating. Great. So finished with carrots. I'm going to clean off my cutting board, and I'm going to start processing my garlic. And folks, just so you know, I know I've mentioned this before, but there is a recording of this workshop that'll just be me that you can always go back online and visit. And if you ever want to make this again, or you're trying it out with different ingredients, but you want to reference, it'll be there. Okay, so I'm going to do quite a few cloves of garlic here. These are really tiny, so probably going to do just about half the head. Mince it up and see where that gets me. For security purposes, in case I want more garlic, which I usually do, I like to do quite a bit. And some garlic tricks and tips. You can use a knife and push down on the clove. That kind of breaks this outer layer of skin. I cut the root end off, and that helps me peel it nice and clean. And it's also already like a little bit mashed up, which is better if you're going to be mincing anyways. So I put a knife down, use the pressure and weight of my body to push down on it, and then peel and or cut the end off first. It doesn't really matter. If your garlic has little green sprouts on it, that does not mean it's bad. It means that it's trying to start a new plant. But if your garlic has big brown spots on it, that is not desirable. So you would skip that piece. I'm going to get through these as quick as I can because they're teensy tiny little cloves, a lot of work.
So if the garlic has that green thing coming out, should it be helpful to remove it, or it doesn't matter?
You can remove it or you can eat it. It's also going to taste just like garlic. It's just a shoot. So if you ever see garlic growing, when you plant, you can plant cloves just like this in your backyard or in a pot or something like that. And it'll send a shoot out that's going to be looking to get some sunlight. So it can grow into a whole clove. It's really interesting how it propagates, and it's a fun plant to grow, but you plant it in October, so don't forget if you're curious to try it out. Great. Some things that are helpful for me often is I get elephant garlic, which is like really big cloves, so you only have to peel, one for a meal. It's very nice. Okay. And then I'm going to sort of, to do this quickly, kind of squish them all together. And then make sure your ends are cut off. It looks like I missed one. Those aren't fun to bite into. And then I'm going to start going into strips first, and I'll come back through to finely mince them. Now, we do want this to be finely minced. We don't want really big chunks, and that's because some of this garlic is going to be like completely raw, served in your cooked greens once we get those going. So it's just important to make sure you're not biting into huge cloves. So you're going to want to run through quite a bit, or stick it through the food processor if you'd like. You kind of have to weigh the balance of, do I want an extra dish or extra chopping time? And today, chopping wins for me. Another fun trick with garlic that a friend taught me long ago is you can make garlic paste. And you can really just do that. You chop it up, mince it really fine, sprinkle salt onto it, and start to massage it with like a spoon, pressing down, like maybe even a mortar and pestle would be better than a spoon on the cutting board. And that makes for a really good spread on toast or something you want to roast in the oven. It's really amazing how it gets like creamy. It gets almost creamed. Okay, so my garlic's looking pretty minced. I'm going to push off the rest of that onto the cutting board. And great, rinse my hands. All right, so let's start with some stovetop work. So we got these Success boil in a bag Jasmine rice. This is really simple. All you're going to do, I'm going to do 4 cups. You do 4 cups to 1 bag. You could also do 6 cups for 2 bags. It's not going to make a huge difference. So decide if you want to do 1 or 2. I'm just going to do 1 of these bags today. If you don't want to use the boil-in bags, just follow the directions on whatever rice you're going to be using. And I'm just using the pot I always cook rice in. It's like one of these little guys. And I'm going to definitely set a timer because we're going to have quite a few different things going on and I don't want to forget about it. Now, thinking about rice in this dish in particular, it's traditionally served in a stone hot pot. So when they bring it out to you, if you get to go to a Korean restaurant that has these, it's going to be sizzling and it's in like maybe a cast iron or a stone pot. And that gives the rice a really crispy feel on the bottom. And so we're not going to be able to do that with this dish because we don't have a crispy hot pot, but really it's an experience to try. I do tend to like my rice to be a little bit drier for the dish because we have so many wet vegetables and sauces on it, but this will be just fine. We're gonna get that water boiling and then we'll put in our rice when the water's boiling and we'll cook it for 10 minutes. So I'll set a timer once the rice goes in. So water's boiling. I might put in a pinch of salt and lower the time for boiling. And remember that that's there. Okay, right now we're going to, the zucchini could still sit another couple minutes with its salt. So we're going to get mixing of our bibimbap sauce. So there are 3 different, I brought a different one out that I've got a big Y, but there's the gochujang is fermented chili paste. So it's spicy. It's not horribly spicy, but you're not going to use a whole lot of it. And if you really don't like spice, use even less than the recipe says. Our recipe, though, does have 2 tablespoons of the chili paste in it. So that's what I'm going to start off with. You can measure it. If you're good at doing it by eye, you can certainly do that, or you can do it with a measuring spoon. We're starting with I'm using a small bowl that's going to hold my sauce, and I'm doing 2 tablespoons. The next thing that we're going to be adding to this is vinegar. So we're using rice vinegar for this, which is also kind of a neat thing. Hi, Jeanette, I was just getting to cucumbers. So what I really like to do with this dish is actually soak cucumbers in a little bit of rice vinegar and add those as well to the dish. I do a little bit of rice vinegar, a pinch of sugar, a little bit of salt. And because we don't have pickled things for this dish, it kind of takes on that like tangy vinegar situation. So if we have time, I'll just demonstrate that quickly. But back to the sauce for now. We just did 2 tablespoons of gochujang, or the fermented chili paste. Then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. If you don't have rice vinegar at home, it came with the kits, but you can always substitute other vinegars. I just like rice vinegar because it's a sweet, neutral flavor. We're going to do 1 tablespoon of water to thin out the sauce, because we kind of want it to be drizzly. And then we're going to do, this is optional. If you don't want sugar, you don't need sugar. I really like when this sauce has a little bit of sugar. And we're just going to do 1 teaspoon of sugar. So not a whole lot. I added that. And then lastly, we're going to do 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, tamari, or if you have like Bragg's, anything that has that umami flavor is great. And that's going to be our sauce. Sometimes I'll put sesame seeds in there and a little bit of sesame oil. That's really good too. So if you want, there is quite a bit of sesame oil in the dish already, but you're welcome to put a little bit of a dash of that. Or if you had sesame seeds, you could do that. Probably just like literally a dash, because sesame oil is really powerful. It's not something you'd want to cook a whole dish in. It's a seasoning oil. And then you can just give that a stir. I'm going to use what I already used. And we're going to get those flavors meshing together. And that's going to be our sauce that goes on top of our bibimbap. You're welcome to give it a taste if you want. Adjust it for spice. It's already going to have salt because of the soy sauce, so just be aware of that. And it's going to be really strong because it's the main flavor. We're not doing a whole ton of seasoning with other stuff here. So you can put that to the side. All right, so now we are going to come back to our zucchini. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a colander. You could use a paper towel and a colander, or just a colander. And I'm going to dump it over the sink and kind of press out the excess moisture. You can use your hands, or you could use gloves with your with a paper towel or whatever you like. So I'm just giving it a press. And you'll notice quite a bit of liquid has come off of those zucchini. Maybe I'll use a paper towel. And you can keep that colander out. We're actually going to probably use it again with our tofu. Okay. So now that that's quite a bit drier, got that. My water just started boiling for my rice, or is about to. So now is a good time to take a moment, slow down, set your timer for your rice, and stick that in. And you can do 1 or 2 bags, depends on how many people you're cooking for. Okay, so I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes for this rice, and it's okay if it sits for a little bit. And the water is about to boil. And then we're actually, if you want to get out another pan, and you can fill it like halfway with water. This is going to be for steaming our greens. So I'm going to get that boiling too. So I've got 1 pot with rice boiling. I'm going to stick the rice in. Then I'm going to bring it down to a simmer. And then I have 1 pot with water about halfway full. I'm putting it on high so that we can steam. And then our greens that we'll be working with next. I'm just sliding my cook station over so I can show you what I'm doing. And we're trying to parse this out so everything has a little bit of time. So Swiss chard stems are totally edible. Sometimes they're softer than this. So I'm not loving how they're a little bit tough at the bottom. So what I'm going to choose to do is sort of pull the top leaf off the bottom stem. I'll show you that again. So I still do have some stem here, but it's not the whole thing. And I know that they look a little wilty, and that's okay. They're still going to taste the same, especially because we're steaming them and for this dish. So Swiss chard tastes a lot like spinach. It's in the same family as beets, and it has sort of that like salty, soft, buttery texture and flavor. So if you want to just do what I'm doing, pull them off the bottom part of the stem. If you see any parts of the leaf that actually are rotting, you might skip. Like this one, that's seen better days. I'm going to skip out. But everything else looks pretty good. And these are just another like little side dish vegetable. That one's also seen better days. And I'm going to put those in a pile on my cutting board. Make sure to check your rice so that it doesn't overflow. That's pretty good. Great. And so the bag should be tucked in, touching the water. Great. Now what I'm going to do is sort of the cigar method, I've heard it called. I'm just rolling this all up, and I'm going to cut it into strips. And you can also, so I went along with vertical cuts, and I might do a horizontal cut as well. So that's just making these pieces a little more bite-sized. And we're gonna use a strainer again for this. So you'll want to keep a strainer handy or grab a different one, whatever you want to do. All right, next step, while our pot is heating up to cook our greens, our rice is on, mine has 8 minutes left. I'm going to heat up about 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. That can be regular like canola oil, olive oil, whatever you want to do. I'm going to do some light olive oil. I'm going to do 1 and 2. And that is going to be for my zucchini. That's what's going in first. I'm going to turn it on to medium heat. Depending on your stove, you could do medium high. You just don't want to burn anything. Spread that oil out over the pan so there's not immediate sticking. I used a non-stick pan that sometimes sticks. You know, feel free to use cast iron or any other cooking pan you have. And I'm going to go ahead and drop in my zucchini. And then so I can reuse this one, I'll give it a little rinse. So don't forget your zucchini has already received salt. It has already been salted. We're not going to add any more. All right, and we're going to get that cooking. At some point, you can add a little bit of sesame oil to your zucchini if you'd like, but you don't need to. There's plenty of that going on. And so once this cooks a tiny bit, I'm going to add about a ½ teaspoon of garlic. You'll see me do that. Right. Now we're just waiting for our water to boil. Folks, if you're feeling overwhelmed by how fast we're going, You could skip this step and do it later, but I just wanted to show something you can do with your zucchini. Oh, where did it go? Oh, or zucchini, your cucumber. You can slice it into rounds, and this will be sort of the pickly, fresh taste of the kit that goes into the bibimbap, and I'm just slicing it. One trick I've always done with zucchini or cucumber, but this is a cucumber, is I slice down the middle, but not all the way to the end, so that I can slice it even faster. And now it's in half medallions. A little more bite-sized. I'm probably not going to cut the whole thing, but you're welcome to if you're a big cucumber fan. And what I would tell you to do for this is just simply a little bit of salt, just like a hand pinch. A little bit of sugar, same thing, even smaller pinch than salt. A little bit of your rice vinegar, since we've got a lot of that. You can put quite a bit of rice vinegar on there and just let that sit for a little bit. You can give it a stir until you're ready to serve. I think it's like even better than just having fresh cucumber alongside. So those are sort of like quick pickled cucumbers, but not really. I'm going to make sure that my zucchini is getting evenly coated with the oil. And the last, so once we're going to use the same frying pan for our carrots as we did for the zucchini. So I'm starting to hear some sizzling, which is good. Now that we're getting sizzling, they're not going to cook super long because they're so thin and they have so much surface area, really like 2 minutes. So at this point, I'm going to add in about a half, well, use as much as you'd like, but I'm going to do about a half teaspoon of minced raw garlic. Maybe I'll do a little more than that, maybe a pinch more. And make sure once your garlic's in that you're kind of stirring constantly, because garlic likes to burn, and burnt garlic has a very overpowering flavor. If you're noticing sticking happening, you probably need to use a little bit more oil. Great. So I'm just going to keep my eye on it, keep stirring it when it seems like it's getting hot. Perfect. If you really like garlic, you can add some more. We probably cut extra, so it's up to you. Recipe calls for a half teaspoon, but you could do more. Sometimes I find lifting my pan and shaking it helps evenly spread my vegetables. I want them to be evenly spread out.
Are you cooking the zucchini over like high heat all the time?
It's a medium high heat. Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone has different stove power though, you know, cooking with flames versus cooking, this is a glass top. Be careful going to medium high, maybe stick with medium if you have flames, but just know that you don't want any burning to happen or sticking. So, but we do kind of, it's going to be a quick cook. Medium, medium high. And my greens bowl has just started boiling. So what I'm going to do is take some of my chard and drop it in. I'll give it a quick stir. The heat is still on high for the Swiss chard or the greens, and I'm going to let it sit for a minute. Then I'm going to drain it, and I'm going to pour or use my sink to run cold water over the top. So there's a lot happening right now. Just do your best, take your time. If you need to turn something off to concentrate on another, that's totally fine. I do that all the time too.
Brooke, I have a question.
Yeah.
On the cucumbers, I sliced them up. I put a little sugar on them, and I forgot what else you put on them. Sesame oil?
Salt, sugar, and a little rice vinegar.
Oh, okay, okay, great,
Sesame oil would be good too, but I think it's plenty good with just rice vinegar.
okay.
Thank you for clarifying with that. All right, folks, my zucchini are getting close to done. I'm waiting to see my garlic browning a little bit, and then we'll pull those off. At this point, because chard is such a soft leafy green, it's turned bright green. It's hard to see on the camera, but it's a beautiful bright green. That tells me it's good to go. It's time to drain it. With certain other cooking greens, they might take a little longer, like collard greens, which are rougher, more fibrous, but this is good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain it, and then I'm going to pour some cold, or I'm going to run cold water over it. If you wanted to strain and then put it in a bowl with some ice, that works too, but I'm going to leave my sink on cold for a minute. And so what we're doing effectively is like a light blanch. We're shocking the vegetable. We made it really hot and now we're making it really cold. And one of the indicators that I use to know my garlic is ready is scent. I can smell it. When my garlic has been cooked, it has a different fragrance and it starts to give off this amazing kind of like sweet and nutty scent. So that's when I know that my zucchini is probably good to go. Something you can do is add in a little bit of sesame oil, and that's going to give it even more of a nutty flavor. So I just literally like a pin drop of it is plenty. And then I'm going to stir that in. Let it toast a tiny bit. And then I'm going to pull the zucchini off the frying pan. So I'm just using a little plate temporarily. And then I would suggest giving this a quick rinse and lining it with some more oil so we can cook our carrots. So you can leave the heat on. Gave it a quick rinse. One nice thing about rice in the bag, so mine just went off, is it's very easy to just pull it out as soon as it's done. So you can set it on a plate. You can kind of feel when it's finished. I gave it a little bit of extra time, probably 11 minutes, so it should be totally great. All right, I know there's a lot going on and you're doing fabulous, everyone. So my pan is heating up again, and I'm going to add a little more olive oil. Then I'm going to drop in my carrots. These are going to take a little more time to cook. We still want them to have bite, but we don't want them to be too hard. I'm going to use just a dash of salt and some pepper. And then I'm going to give the carrots a stir so that they're coated in the olive oil. Carrots do tend to take in a lot of oil, so you might want to use a little more than you did for your zucchinis. Zucchini, plural. Fabulous. Okay, so our cooking greens, they should be cold to the touch when they you want to make sure that they've gotten nice and blanched. And you'll notice that even though they're cooked, they still have this beautiful color, and that's exactly what we want.
Hey, Britt, do we want to squeeze the chard after the cold water or not necessarily?
Yeah, we're gonna squeeze that we definitely want to squeeze it. So we want to get, I brought it over here a little early to show you guys, but we want to get this quite a bit drier than it is. So you can use your colander. And I'm actually just gonna grab it with my hand and give it a good squeeze. And I don't know if you can see from there, you're gonna get a lot of water out. Okay. So you're gonna have kind of like a ball of greens. And if you're having trouble balancing all the things going on the stove and what you're working on, just turn the stove down and let the carrots cook lower and lower. We'll probably make them even sweeter. Okay, so I got a bowl of greens. And to these, we are going to be adding garlic, sesame oil, salt, and pepper. So it's a lot of the similar spices. I'm going to do a half teaspoon of salt, or not salt, sorry, a half teaspoon of minced garlic. And I'm not adding more because you just don't need more raw garlic in this. That's plenty this time. If you're cooking with it, I think that's okay, but you don't want it to be too overpowering. And then we are going to use a half teaspoon of sesame oil. You can do that by eye if you want. You could even use like an eighth, whatever you think. And then we'll do salt and pepper to taste. So I'm doing a tiny little pinch of salt. And some black pepper. Then we'll stir and let it rest alongside your finished zucchini. Beautiful. I'm making quite the mess today. All right. Checking our carrots, making sure to stir regularly. They should be turning a yellower color, a lighter orange as they're cooking. You'll smell a sweet fragrance as they become closer and closer to being done. And again, add more oil if it's sticking really hard. We cut them pretty thin, so they should not take super long to cook. Great. And now to the main piece of our dish. We're going to be making our crispy fried tofu. Okay, so my tofu has already started leaching out water into the dish. I'm even going to drain that now. What our goal is here is to get out a lot of the excess water. Normally I do this over the sink, but I just want to show you what I'm doing. I'm squeezing my tofu kind of lightly. It's not breaking into pieces, but I am getting a lot of extra water out of it. And this is going to help it be crispier when we fry. Now, as we talked about before, you can sandwich it in a plate if you had more time to do so. And you'll notice the tofu might start to break apart a little bit, and that's totally fine. We're going to be cutting it into chunks anyhow to fry. And so you'll probably want to, you can also squeeze it onto a plate, but sometimes it sucks up some of that water back up into it. Kind of did that there. So that's why I like kind of doing it in the air. You can also cut it in half or rip it in half, and then you have a little bit more surface area on your hands to squeeze. Okay. And once you feel like you've gotten enough of it out, which I'm sure you've already gotten a lot out if you froze it, you can pat it dry, and we're going to cut it into cubes or chunks. Carrots, one more stir. The carrots are almost ready to come out. So these don't have to be perfect. I'm going to make sort of cubes. I'll show you the size up to the camera. Tofu is fermented bean curds, soybeans, and it's a great source of protein. and it can be disguised and cooked in so many different ways and takes up flavors super well. Excuse me. All right, so I've got these nice little cubes. If you want to break them, you know, this is about the size I'd like to fry. It does make a little more work when you're flipping them. So sometimes I'll do a whole strip like this big. But for today with the bibimbap, it goes really well if it's in like little cubes or pieces. And at this point, I'm going to give my carrots a taste. They're soft, but they still have bite, and they're starting to brown a little, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to take those off. I'm going to reuse this little plate, left dishes. And then I'm going to get my carrots onto there. So really, if you haven't noticed, I'm trying to use as few dishes as I can. Everything's actually getting cooked on this one frying pan. Now we're going to want to use quite a bit more oil than we had before. Because we want to fry these. So what I'm going to get is some, this is vegetable oil. If you don't have that, you can use olive oil. Vegetable oil works pretty well for my purposes. I'm going to turn us on medium heat. 1, 2 glugs. And I'm going to show you, I want the bottom of my pan to be well coated with like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So that oil can climb up the sides and really get the tofu sizzling. And I'm not going to drop the tofu in until I know that oil is hot. Sometimes it's helpful when you take the oil or the tofu out of the oil to have a paper towel lined plate. And the reason I do this is to drain off excess oil. So we're just waiting for that to heat. And in a moment, we'll be plating, which is crazy. It happens very fast. Oh, these have automatic chairs. I always forget. Okay. Fabulous. So a good way to test is just a tiny splash of water. And if it sizzles like that, your oil is hot enough. So I'm going to go ahead and drop some of these in and just be careful for burning yourself, obviously. I'm going to make it so that they're not touching each other, but there's a bunch of them on the pan. Maybe that's all I'll do for now. And we're going to let those cook for a couple minutes. While those are cooking, we'll start the plating process. Okay, so I'm going to lay my rice down first. It's kind of a perfect serving. Still nice and hot because it was in that bag, which is great. One thing you could also do if you felt like it is actually crisp up your rice a little bit on a frying pan with some oil. Just let it sit on like a cast iron for like a minute on medium heat. That would crisp it up too, but it's going to be delicious either way. Then I like to kind of decorate the plate where I'll put in a section of carrot. And you can mix them all up in the end if you want. Little section of zucchini. A little section of greens. And then some of your raw cucumber. that may or may not, depending on your preference, have rice vinegar. And then there's room for your tofu as soon as it's finished. And it's already looking beautiful. Don't forget about your sauce that you can drizzle on top. You can do that now, or you can do it once you have your tofu on there. I'm gonna wait. What was I just grabbing? Can't even remember. I'm gonna get some kimchi on my fridge because I think that's a good addition. So kimchi is fermented cabbage with chili and all kinds of spices. It goes super well with bibimbap. It's often served with it. If you can pick some up, you can get kimchi at pretty much every store everywhere, produced locally or not locally. I'll put a little pickled stuff or sour stuff on my plate. And now we just wait for our tofu. So we need a rubber spatula to flip. That's what I was getting before. I'm going to gently flip these. And you should see browning on the side that you're flipping. So I'm going to show you. That's what I want to, it's hard to see in this light, but I want to see that browning as I'm flipping. Each cube is going to get flipped. Tongs work probably a little bit better than what I'm doing, but use what you got. And you can really flip these on all four sides if you want them extra crispy. The longer you cook, the more water will be evaporated and the crunchier they will be. But I've definitely cooked my tofu too long where it's really crunchy on the outside and kind of has nothing on the inside. So just keep an eye out for that. You don't want to lose all the nutritional value. And so in order to drizzle your sauce, I would just over the top. You can simply just spoon it over the whole plate. You could just put it on the rice if you wanted. Great. And then we just wait for our tofu. I know it's 6 o'clock, everyone. I really want to show you the finished tofu, fried tofu. But does anyone have questions before we close out for the night? Oh, and maybe I should show you what I got going on so far. It's a very beautiful dish, very healthy too.
It looks beautiful.
We'll wait for a couple more minutes to see if anyone has questions. And I'm just pulling off some of my more done pieces of tofu. Maybe I'll drain them for a second. Folks, I encourage you to try this with other meats that you might like, or fish, or other vegetarian, vegan proteins. Super, super lovely, easy dish to make. So much of the items could be in your fridge and just be easily heated up or, you know, pickled, ready to go.
My kitchen smells great.
Glad. So Jeanette, yeah, our recipe is pulled, it's adapted from Korean bapsang, and a lot of the cook times were a little bit shorter on the recipe than what we did. I think it really depends on how you cut your vegetables. So if you really, really thinly matchstick them, it's going to take less time. But if you did what I did, my version of matchsticking, which is a little bit bigger, it's going to take a little longer to cook. Does that make sense? Got it. Great. Okay. Well, I hope everyone enjoys. Don't forget to give us some feedback if you're able, or recipe suggestions of things you might want to do. We've gotten a lot of requests for bread, and unfortunately our minds are still on it, but we're just trying to figure out how we would make that work with our kit, and using, you know, the point of this is using local fresh ingredients. So we're still working on it, I promise. But please do give us some feedback. Those really help us make these videos more accessible and more helpful for folks. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoy your food and have a good night.
Thank you so much. It was great.
All right. You
I
take
can't
care.
wait to eat.
Enjoy. I hope you like it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.